Welcome to Coastal Review Podcast.
Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign after a second former aide accused him of sexual harassment. Mr. Cuomo issued a few statements over the weekend, including an apology last night. Drika Duncan is following the latest. Drika, what happens now?
Good morning, Anne Marie. You know, the Attorney General is now taking over this case. This was after she denied the governor's request to choose a private investigator. Essentially, she will now oversee a law firm that will have the power to subpoena.
Charlotte Bennett laid out allegations of harassment against Governor Andrew Cuomo in the New York Times, events that she says took place over several months. In one encounter last June, Bennett said Cuomo asked if she was romantically involved, whether she was monogamous in her relationships, and if she had ever had sex with older men. The 25-year-old former executive assistant added, "I understood that the governor wanted to sleep with me and felt horribly uncomfortable and scared." Yesterday, the governor apologized, writing, "I now understand that my interactions may have been insensitive or too personal. Some of the things I have said have been misinterpreted as an unwanted flirtation. To the extent anyone felt that way, I am truly sorry." Alessandra Biaggi is chair of the state Senate's Ethics Committee and worked in the governor's office in
Former Andrew Cuomo aide accused him of sexual harassment, saying he allegedly asked personal questions about her sex life last spring.
So President and founder of Solidarity Strategies, author of T.O. Bernie, former senior advisor to the Sanders campaign, Chuck Rocha, and White House reporter for Real Clear Politics, Philip Wegman, join us now to discuss. Chuck, let me start with you. One of the most remarkable things in American politics happened. Governor Cuomo actually apologized for his conduct. According to some of the people I know who cover him, said it was one of the first times they've ever seen him be publicly contrite in any way. Of course, he says that, she misunderstood the situation, but this is the second former aide in order to come out and accuse him. Many people in the New York Democratic Party coming out and even calling for him outright to resign. This seems like an actual political crisis for him on top of the nursing home situation. Just lay out how you see how this is going to play out for him.
Well, first of all, people at home need to understand that New York is way different than lots of politics and lots of states because it's so big. When you talk about Democrat in New York, it means so many things. You have so many different factions of those Democrats, right? So you need to understand when you see Democrat comes out against Cuomo, let's keep in mind, this is a crisis. He's in trouble. That's why you saw him do the apologies. And this seems like, from the outside looking in, lots of real things here that should be addressed very, very seriously. But just know that these New York politics, you have 4 or 5 wings of even the progressive caucus. You have lots of middle-of-the-road Democrats, and then you have Democrats in New York who act just like Republicans as far as I'm concerned. So watch who you see saying what, because a lot of them would love to just take him down all the way around. And there's a lot of progressives that I've been around.
Or cause any harm. Our national correspondent, Drika Duncan, is following this story for us. Drika, good morning to you.
Good morning. The governor says he is handing over this investigation to the state attorney general after she denied his original request to choose a private investigator. Now, the AG is expected to have full investigative authority and even oversee a law firm that will have the power to subpoena.
Charlotte Bennett laid out allegations of harassment against Governor Andrew Cuomo in the New York Times, events that she says took place over several months. In one encounter last June, Bennett said Cuomo asked if she was romantically involved, whether she was monogamous in her relationships, and if she had ever had sex with older men. The 25-year-old former executive assistant added, "I understood that the governor wanted to sleep with me and felt horribly uncomfortable and scared." Yesterday, the governor apologized, writing, "I now understand that my interactions may have been insensitive or too personal. Some of the things I have said have been misinterpreted as an unwanted flirtation. To the extent anyone felt that way, I am truly sorry." Alessandra Biaggi is chair of the state Senate's Ethics Committee and worked in the governor's office in 2017.
He's actually saying that he meant for those words to be playful, and there is no realm of playful when a governor of a state asks a young staffer who is 25 years old if she has sex with older men or if she has sex outside of her relationship. That is not only inappropriate, it is abusive.
The allegations have led to swift calls for an investigation from many prominent Democrats, including President Joe Biden.
President Biden has been consistent that he believes that every woman should be heard, should be treated with respect and with dignity.
New York Attorney General Letitia James will lead that investigation into Bennett's claims and those of another former aide, Lindsey Boylan. In a post last week, Boylan alleged Cuomo once kissed her on the mouth without permission. Cuomo has denied all of Boylan's claims.
That behavior from the governor is the exact behavior that prevents us from having good governance. It impacts policy. The lack of just being able to acknowledge that either mistakes are made or that certain behavior is harmful to others is highly problematic of someone who holds the office that is the highest office of the state of New York.
State Senator Biaggi says that in the past, governors have had a lot of power when it comes to investigations within the state. She says she's hopeful that the Attorney General's involvement in this case will lead to more transparency. Anthony?
Jerika, thank you.
Developing now, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo apologizing for inappropriate comments he made that he says, quote, had been misinterpreted as an unwanted flirtation to a young female aide during private meetings last spring. Now, this is the second former aide to the governor accusing him of sexual impropriety in the last week. Maggie Haberman back with us, also joining us, New York Magazine contributor David Friedlander. And I want to read what Charlotte Bennett, age 25, says, because she has come forward on the record. And when someone does that, I think we want to give them their words in their name. So this is what she says. I understood that the governor wanted to sleep with me and felt horribly uncomfortable and scared and was wondering how I was going to get out of it and assumed it was the end of my job. The Times also reports Bennett, who had just turned 25 at the time, said Mr. Cuomo had also asked about her feelings about age differences in relationships, saying, quote, age doesn't matter, according to a text she sent to her friend. He asked me if I believe if age made a difference in relationships, and he also asked me in the same conversation if I had ever been with an older man. So that's what Charlotte Bennett says happened, Maggie. I don't believe that Governor Cuomo has disputed any of those statements that she has made. So what do you make now of his evolution in response and ultimately the apology for something?
Look, hearing Andrew Cuomo apologize for anything is breathtaking. I have covered him on and off for 20 years, and I can't remember another time when he has done that. I think it speaks to the degree to which he knows he is in real trouble. I think he was trying to avoid having Tish James, the New York Attorney General, end up with an independent probe into what has happened. I think he resisted that repeatedly. I think ultimately he had to throw up his hands and give in to it yesterday. We saw multiple statements from his office come out about such a probe, and eventually he appeared to just give in. Look, I think that there have been many moments where Andrew Cuomo was in trouble politically over the last 20 years. I think this one is different. I do think it's worth noting about his statement, John, that he is saying that, essentially it's her fault. She misinterpreted. I was doing something. It had no intent at all, and it's on her. I think that a lot of women have heard that over the years, and I think that on any level in 2021, having an older man make comments like that to a subordinate, particularly a governor, is jarring.
Let me read a portion of his statement. He says, at work, sometimes I think I'm being playful and make jokes that I think are funny. I do on occasion tease people in what I think is a good-natured way. I now understand that my interactions may have been insensitive or too personal, and that some of my comments, given my position, made others feel in ways I never intended. I acknowledge some of the things I have said have been misinterpreted as an unwanted flirtation. And so, David, tell us the significance of him feeling as though he has to make a statement like that. And does he think did he think that by making a statement like that, that would make the independent investigation go away?
Well, it was an extraordinary day yesterday. As Maggie said, I mean, we just saw sort of statement after statement coming out of the governor's office, which was a clear sign that they were scrambling and they didn't know what was going on. And really, for the first time in a decade as governor, it seemed like they sort of weren't in control of events. I think, they want really to avoid this getting out of their hands. Andrew Cuomo is a notorious control freak, doesn't want to get into situations where he can't sort of manipulate the outcome. If this gets into Attorney General Tish James' hands, it's something he can no longer control. I wonder if they're bracing for, what the rest of this week looks like, if more people may come forward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a big question, right? Because you have this investigation, which I know Maggie will also go into the New York State government response. But to me, it's an investigation into what? There's an agreed set upon facts here that Cuomo doesn't dispute, right, at this point. So it's just what he admits to is something that I think people can look at, Maggie, and say, my God, if you're a 60-plus-year-old man in a position of power, the most benign interpretation of his conversation with Charlotte Bennett crosses lines.
Particularly in the sort of, it's not post-Me Too era, but we are over a moment where Me Too was very front and center, and this is a governor who is well familiar with that movement and has talked about championing women's rights. So it is jarring. I do think, just to your question, John, about what does an investigation do, I think the question, as David said, is do other women come forward? I think that is something that the governor's office and the governor himself are very concerned about, because if, as Andrew Cuomo says in his statement, I make jokes like this sometimes, then you have to assume there's a strong likelihood that he made these jokes with somebody else or multiple somebody else's, and what do they say now in an investigation where the Attorney General is going to have subpoena power? So it just goes in directions potentially that Andrew Cuomo can't control, as David said, and doesn't want.
David, as we've pointed out, Democrats handle this so differently than Republicans when accusations like this are made. Obviously Al Franken springs to mind. He's gone, and 15 women came forward with similar accusations against Donald Trump or worse, and he survived and just said that they were lying. And so the Democrats who have come forward to say this is unacceptable from Governor Cuomo, what's their plan?
Well, it's interesting because one thing that has sort of struck me over the last couple of days as all of this has come out is that in some ways the sort of Cuomo coalition hasn't really abandoned him quite yet. I mean, there are calls for him to resign, but they're mostly coming from the people who were calling for him to resign 3 weeks ago when we were in the midst of the nursing home scandal, which is another big bombshell to land in his lap. It's Donald Trump-aligned Republicans and it's progressive lawmakers who've never really liked him. I mean, you're still seeing sort of legislative leaders, mainstream Democrats. I haven't seen a lot of Cuomo needs to resign from them. You're seeing a lot of this needs to be investigated. Everything needs to be heard. But for now, it seems as if it's still kind of holding together. I don't know how much longer that'll be able to last, but it's there now.
Maggie, why do you think that is? Is that just because the pace of it is so fast you don't actually need to go out and get ahead of it?
No, I think it's because these are a bunch of Democrats, and David has an excellent piece on this in New York Magazine, the degree to which there are years of Democrats who sort of would like revenge against Andrew Cuomo for various slights, while he was in office and various behaviors by him. But they know that he's very powerful overall as a governor. He's been seen as very successful overall. He generally does well with the public. His approval rating, we have to obviously what the polling is in a couple of days, but he has held up even with this nursing home issue a couple of weeks ago. And there have been other issues in the past, John, where it has seemed as if he is in real political peril and nothing has happened. So I don't think Democrats want to get ahead of their skis and be the people who called for him to resign, given the likelihood that that's not something that is going to happen. And based on the existing fact set, I don't think they feel like they can do that. They're calling for an investigation. If you see a bunch of other additional women come forward, then I think you could see this changing very quickly. But for now, I expect it to stay the way it is if the existing fact set stays as it is.
David, how long will this investigation take?
Well, I think we're just starting. I think they're still, still sort of figuring out the parameters. But the Democrats I talked to in Albany and around New York today are sort of preparing for, if this goes forward, a kind of long slog. I mean, this could be weeks, months for Attorney General James or whoever she appoints to sort of gather all the facts. And, there's a chance that does Cuomo hang on just because this is just such a slow-moving story as they get witnesses and interview people, and, we pick it back up in 6 months or something.
Looking for the right manufacturer for your parts? Xometry is the right fit. Here's how it works.
Maggie, David, thank you both very much for all